Welcome everyone. I'm Mel Cutcliffe from Indigo 8 and it's lunchtime for us here in London, but I know we've got people joining from all over the world. And this is our first deeper dive conversation with the Four Seasons Maldives. And I'm delighted to introduce Armando Kraenzlin, who is the Regional Vice President, and also Faisal Ibrahim, who is the Environment Coordinator. And then we also have Juliet Kinsman, who is a hotel and sustainability expert and writer. And she's going to be asking the tough questions today.
Thank you so much, Mel, and thank you to everyone. I know we've all been doing a lot of Zooms and webinars, and a lot of them have given CEOs, I'm going to be honest, the opportunity just to talk at us and tell us what they want us to hear, and it's been very much a platform for PR. But today it was really important to all of us, me as a journalist, to have an open, honest conversation about sustainability, particularly in the Maldives, and particularly now after we've gone through so much change. Should we even be traveling to the Maldives?
Yes, you should. And, there will be those people at one end of the spectrum who say that, if you go onto a long haul flight, that's exactly what the planet doesn't need at the moment. Frankly speaking, we are hoteliers. I've had the privilege to be 20 years in the Maldives, and I've seen that this country transform itself and providing so many wonderful opportunities and improvements in livelihood to the people here. And let's not forget, the economy here came to a standstill 3 months ago. It's not going to be easy to get this industry going again in this country.
And for me, the challenge is when we look at all the countries that depend most on tourism, in terms of their reliance on the money coming in, I think yes, we should, and we'll cover a lot of this. So my next question would be, what do you say to those who suggest the Maldives are sinking?
Many people have asked me over the years, and I get frustrated because to answer that question, you need a lot of time because there are so many aspects to it. But at the end of the day, it all boils down to the coral reef. It was the coral reef that created this country. This country must be one of the very few that was built by animals, polyp by polyp. And the coral reef is here to protect the islands as well. And there was no better example than the tsunami in 2004 to prove that point. And so, if we are able to keep the coral reef alive, then these islands will survive.
Absolutely. Things have changed so much in the last 20 years and of course the last few months. This is actually my question for you. I'd love to know about how your supply chain has changed, over the last 20 years, because we look at brochures, we look at beautiful suites, we hear about activities, but we don't really hear as a customer what goes on behind the scenes.
I'll tell you that 20 years ago, it was much easier to do business in the Maldives. We had all of 3 competitors. And it was wonderful because business was just happening automatically. On the other side, you had to be very self-reliant. You had to bring in everything yourself. And so at that time, our supply chain was probably 90% coming in from outside. Nowadays, it's about 50%. There is a good supply available in Male, and what's more important, the services also, the consultancies, people with skills are available that can come in and help you in times of need. You don't need to fly in people from halfway around the world. Let's say food stuff 10 years ago, practically everything had to be brought in because the little quantities that were available at that time were not there consistently, and the quality wasn't enough either. Nowadays, it's really much easier. And we also have a better focus on bringing in products from the country, products from the region, really showcasing these products. We put that in a concept called planetary well-being. And we're trying to apply this concept to everything that we do, all aspects of the operation. And in food and beverage, it means that is arugula from Italy the only salad that we should be bringing in, or can we showcase with joy and pride and creativity some of the leaves that are grown here?
How much is being imported now in your supply chain, would you say?
50%.
Really? So you've halved it. Can you talk to us about your waste around the food? Because I think that's what really does concern a lot of people that so much is going to go to landfill. Talk to us about your food print.
Honestly speaking, food waste for me has never been an issue. I've been in the country in this industry for way too long, and I've never thought about it. I've always eaten my plate, and I've always thought that it's not my business to tell others to eat up their plate. We hired Faisal, who's going to talk later, because we signed up for an organization called EarthCheck. And in the past 18 months, grueling paperwork months, one question popped up and says, how are you handling your food waste? And the honest answer was, well, we aren't. We started standing by in the staff canteen and checking what people do with their plates when they come back after the meal. And it was quite shocking. And then we started to scale to weigh the waste every breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And then a whiteboard appeared, and the green marker and the red marker. And we have green days and we have red days, but everybody is much more conscious now.
Okay, so not just externally you're trying to minimize the waste, but I guess that's a process internally, then the staff are aware, they're actually aware.
And what I like about this EarthCheck process is in the initial concept that they talk to you about is this cannot be a process that is driven by the general manager or by the senior management committee. This is a process that must be driven through the entire organization. And here we are really faced with a concept that is all-inclusive. Everybody has to chip in and participate and agree and be aware.
It is, how do we make the industry more accountable? So for me, I would probably look at the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, the global goals, of which there are 17, and I would think, how are we going to make the industry care about all of those?
Good question. And the word accountability, frankly, in our mind here at the Four Seasons is also relatively new. We've always felt that we were well-intentioned. We always did things because we felt they were the right things to do. And somehow accountability wasn't at the forefront. But we got a wake-up call about 2 years ago when Alex Saporti called us from the now Alliance for Good organization. And she basically, she said, look, we want you in our organization. It's not going to be a walk in the park. We'll be watching you. We'll be auditing you, but we can help you. And that's when Faisal came in and we started this application process. It's about third-party people coming into your organization, checking whether what you're doing is actually what's happening on the ground, whether everybody is pitching in, and helping you to establish goals for the future and ensure that you get better as you go along.
True. Yeah, and Faisal, tell us a bit about your role, because that was you as well.
Right. I'm handling the EarthCheck process internally and maintaining the documentation, bringing awareness to our staff, to our colleagues mostly.
How are you giving back to local communities?
When I can think of one good example, the Four Seasons Apprenticeship Program has definitely done a lot of good to our communities. The scheme has created opportunities, nearly 650 graduates to this date. That is 650 families if you really think about it. And many of them are either now successful in Four Seasons properties or running other hotel properties. And some even have gone and become entrepreneurs in dives and restaurant businesses. Definitely the program has helped in shaping locals' futures.
So Four Seasons is renowned, obviously, as being a company that offers training and upskilling to people in the hospitality industry. I'm just thinking about, the fact that obviously you're training people, that's great. And those people, presumably they can go on and they're going on to work in different hotel brands as well. It's not just for Four Seasons. How, as a business, obviously you're setting up these training schemes. We talked about your supply chain. And now Faisal's saying that some of the people go on to set up their own little micro businesses, and you're nurturing entrepreneurial talents. Sort of, how is the wider community benefiting from Four Seasons?
The know-how, the education levels, the skill set of the local craftsmen has vastly increased in the last 20 years. And there is a lot of small companies out there offering their services. And this has brought to us the ability to outsource certain parts of the operations to qualified people. And I'm thinking of the laundry. We have outsourced our laundry to 2 local companies. Parts of our transportation business is outsourced to a local company. We're working with a women cooperative that produces snacks for the staff canteen, for the staff. So there is fishermen, obviously.
Also, you mentioned women. For me, really important things, and if you look at the United Nations global goals, you look at education and gender equality. Faisal, how do you see that change in education? When you were young, what was education like? And is it getting better? And how about gender equality?
Well, education has definitely boomed in the Maldives. I don't think we have institutional differences along the gender lines to get into the education health services. People are getting good education. In terms of gender equalities, I think there is some work to be done in changing some of the societal perception, stereotyping against women in work in some of the industries. And the way that we can do is through education and bringing more awareness to the local communities and families.
So do you think your daughter has the same opportunities, she will have the same opportunities as your son?
I certainly hope so that would be the case. Like I said before, we have some work to be done in bringing some of the changes in societal perception and patriarchal beliefs in some societies. And how we can do is that through education and bringing more awareness to the families.
This question is okay. This is from an American journalist. I'm curious about the sustainability initiatives underway at the Four Seasons Maldives and the Maldives in general, since 90% of power comes from fossil fuels. The industry can and must do much better. Armando, what are your thoughts?
I think it's the truth. All hotels in the Maldives run on diesel generators. In fact, the whole country runs on diesel generators, including the capital and every village. And so what do we need to do? There are 2 ways to reduce fossil fuels in this process. One is to reduce the amount of energy that is required. And the other one is to find alternatives to generate that energy. In 2012, we had a chief engineer from Costa Rica. And he was a techie, he was highly educated. And he came up with this idea that we should reduce our energy consumption need by 15% in the next 5 years. How are we going to do that? And well, there is capital that needs to be invested, and there is habits that need to change, and there is processes that need to change. And last year, compared to that 2012 base year, we were 17% down, which is good. We have to do better, but it's a meaningful step. 3 years ago, we installed a solar panel installation here on the island. And it was the biggest one in the country when it was installed, 3,200 panels. And about 10% of today's consumption is being generated by these solar panels. So you could go and say that compared to 2012, we now have 25% less fossil fuel need.
We need more than that. I mean,
we do. I fully agree with you. And I was on a call last week and about creating an air conditioning machine that would run on 55% less energy than current machines. And as a bonus, would provide up to 70, 80 liters of distilled water. which of course for Maldives is, I mean, it's a double whammy. It's fantastic. We're going there. And
it's like you said about EarthCheck, you know, it's setting targets, it's bringing it down. You know, see, these are the things as you know, a guest, you don't really look at all this behind the scenes stuff, but I think it's our responsibility as journalists to really understand it better. So, you know, all the press that are here to understand what really makes a hotel more sustainable, because there's so much greenwashing out there. I'm always interested in innovation. So these, you said you're trialing these. I remember you guys set up ways of creating artificial reefs. Reefscapers did that. These are more, and then they innovated it through you, but then they went on to do this with other hotels. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yes, basically it started off in 2001 when our reef was bleached and people were shocked, and we came in and we didn't even know what the Maldives were like before. We just saw a dead reef, and we went out and sought engineers' advice how we can help the reef to rejuvenate. And so we tested first couple of years different technologies. A local consultancy called Seamark at the time, now Reefscapers, came up with this very simple rebar structure. Fast forward 20 years later, we have 7,500 of these structures embedded in the reefs at Kurahura and Landagiravaru. And the research is now going into more heat-resistant species, etc., etc. And Reefscaper has gone to other islands, and other islands have just copied the system. It doesn't matter; it's not copyrighted, and it's something that we felt we were able to kind of get people's attention.
So when you first, you're saying 20 years ago you arrived and there was already bleaching. So because obviously climate change is a really massive issue. And one of the questions that sort of connects to this is climate change is a true emergency. What are you really doing with this crisis in mind? But you're referring to what was already going on from El Nino. So, you know, yeah, what can we do now? I mean, obviously climate change is worse than ever.
If you live in the Maldives or if you visit the Maldives, it's just clear. It's not a debate. It's not up for debate whether it exists or not. And as hoteliers, I think our job is to, you know, to make sure that if you're a skeptic about climate change, that when you leave, you're a champion for the cause.
We all need to innovate and think differently. So I think it's really important to have these conversations. I love this question. What are your thoughts on carbon offsetting? So I am one of the people who's a bit skeptical. I don't think we should be talking about how to mitigate against our emissions. We should just be reducing them altogether.
I think offsetting is better than not offsetting, because it forces a conversation to happen in your mind and in your family at the dinner table. We have not implemented a scheme yet, but we're talking about it. We feel that when we go into this space, that we would like to make sure that our own emissions are mitigated, that the emissions caused by our employees are mitigated, because they too have to fly in, and then give the guests the opportunity to participate. So we've identified a couple of very interesting projects in Tamil Nadu, tree planting projects, agroforests, that have a fantastic social impact in the life of these farmers. I'm
really heartened to hear about Tamil Nadu, because I realize what you're saying is you're probably investing in the people who are actually planting the trees. So there's the socio-economic benefit of that, rather than just the sequestering the carbon. Everyone in the Maldives has conservation projects. What's special about your marine work?
It makes us proud. We look back at 20 years work. I think our marine work is substantial. We've got a team of between 15 and 20 scientists, several PhDs. At the moment, we have a veterinarian in the team. Guy Stevens, the founder of the Manta Trust, used to be a Four Seasons employee for several years here in the Maldives, and it makes us very proud that in some way our company has been able to participate in the birth of the Manta Trust. We focus on three major pillars. One is coral rejuvenation and research. The other one is turtle rehabilitation. And the third one is manta research with the Manta Trust.
Thanks. Because I must admit, as a luxury travel writer, when you see a hotel, a big fancy luxury resort, talk about their turtle tagging or their turtles, I think greenwashing. They're not really, I think they're just doing that nice little project to make us think they're doing loads. But actually, you've been doing this for years and you're actually doing a lot of deep work. And I think it's the value of the science. And tell me more about turtles, because they're threatened in other ways in the Maldives. Is that right?
We have the ghost nets, and we have the Olive Ridley issue with the turtles that get caught in these nets, and it ends badly most of the time. That's one thing. On the other side, I think our outreach programs through the Marine Discovery Center and the scientists that we have there have been able to shift the thinking of the locals when it comes to the environment, when it comes to turtles. I want to ask Faisal a question, actually. Did you eat turtle eggs when you were a kid?
I did, yes. As you mentioned, it wasn't, we didn't think that of a big deal back then when we were young. But obviously, we don't do that now.
20 years ago, it was legal to eat the eggs, but not legal to hunt the turtles. And so somehow there was a sort of a misconnect, and that is now not the case anymore. And Faisal's son is not eating any.
No, but I mean, it's shared. Presumably,
definitely
it's
not
education. I mean, people are realizing. Do they understand the actual impact? It's like it's not just you can't eat turtles. They understand the bigger picture. Why it's a sort of ecosystem, and we need to leave them be for biodiversity. I mean, are people understanding the sort of bigger picture?
Absolutely, yes. People are, especially school children, are very much aware about these environmental species, protected species in the Maldives.
We organize these open days where we invite school classes, and they spend a day with the scientists. They also sniff around the island a little bit. They go in at the back of the house. They understand a little bit about what resort life is all about. Because even resort life has misconceptions or perceptions in the local communities that aren't that accurate. So it's a win-win for everybody.
This question's a tricky one. The biggest generation of travelers is millennials. They're investing in companies which are transparent around their sustainability practices. They'll be the first to travel as bans are lifted. How are Four Seasons hotels hoping to attract these travelers? How are you delivering on the global goals with accountability? So basically it's millennials. I think that, these times will have hit them hard in terms of losing jobs and not having the sort of same budget to spend on luxury holidays. And I think we need to be thinking also about older travelers.
I think it's a cliche to think that only millennials have respect for nature and worry about sustainability and become vegetarians. And if I look at who is booking now for the month of July and August, I tell you there is a lot of Generation X, there is baby boomers, and these are important guests because obviously they have the means to travel now more independently perhaps than younger people.
Interesting. Is there unemployment in the Maldives? Is that why there are so many foreigners? Or are there foreigners doing jobs that Maldives don't want to do? I mean, this is a question from many parts of the world. From what I understand, historically, there wasn't unemployment so much in the Maldives, but it was very reliant on tourism. Armando, do you have something you want to say to that?
Government requests that 45% of all people working in the resorts are local people, which is surprisingly low. It should be more than half, but that's where the law is at the moment. There's also been a study by the United Nations that talks about voluntary, being voluntarily out of work, being a problem in the Maldives, which then brings in pay scales and expectations and all that stuff. Now I've heard a couple of days ago that the government is thinking, because of what's happening with the economy at the moment and the return to normality, that they are going to bring up the ratio required to be followed to above 55%, and so we'll see what happens there.
Is it even possible for a luxury hotel to be sustainable? Someone has asked.
Of course. I mean, sustainable ideas and innovations like we just talked about with this air conditioning machine, all that doesn't come for free. And luxury, the luxury part of the industry has opportunities to trailblaze and come in with experiments and pilots. And frankly speaking, to offer organic toiletries and oxybenzone-free, reef-friendly suntan lotions to guests that also costs much more than if you just go to the supermarket. And
if you look at the word luxury, we generally associate that with lots of treats and generosity. And I do worry that there's too much of a focus on amenities in luxury travel. And so we do need to sort of scale down the stuff, because where does that stuff go? Do we really need it? Do we need that culture? And there's a great question here. It's actually come in from a couple of people. Don't your hotels use a shocking amount of single-use plastic? And I mean, what about now, post-COVID, when we've got more single-use plastic in circulation than ever through PPE, through bottles? Talk to us about that. What are you doing?
Speaking 10 years ago, I'm not proud of it, but I'll share it with you. We had, every year, we sent 360,000 PET bottles to the landfill. This is one hotel. It was completely irresponsible. And we decided to do something about it at that time. We invested in a drinking water plant. Nowadays, you will not find a PET bottle on the island. And what's nice is that our employees also have adopted that thinking. When they see a PET bottle, they go like this. We did away at the same time with plastic straws. And over the last 10 years, we've reached zero single-use plastic in the rooms. I'm not saying that we are plastic free. We're not. There is still plastic in the kitchens. When goods arrive, there is plastics in the laundry. When chemicals arrive, we have a staff shop where our employees buy items that are wrapped in plastic, etc. But there too, we're trying to be intelligent and thoughtful about it. We have joined the initiative or the organization called Parley for the Oceans, which have set up a chapter here in the Maldives. The last 18 months, I think we've collected from our own hotel plus neighboring islands, 6.5 tons of plastic that would have ended up on a landfill in the Maldives, but instead now have been shipped to Taiwan, where this plastic gets turned into yarn and then sold into fashion brands like Adidas.
Oh, I've got shoes made from plastic, recycled, that kind of thing, yeah. And we all know Parley and we love them. However, you know, the Maldives is notorious for having these big islands of rubbish. And I know, Faisal, I mean, what is your take on that? I mean, I think everyone always wants to understand it better. Talk to us about the rubbish. Faisal, how does it work?
So it's good that many of our local islands have their own waste management centers now established. So the councils manages the island waste management. However, I don't think we have proper waste management centers around the country to finally dispose all of this properly. And it's definitely about minimizing the number of waste among the communities. We do have a lot of waste going into the island called Tilafushi in Malay Atoll. Currently is the biggest island.
Yes, so tell us.
If I may, I think for opportunities for better management there, as we said, reduce, but also recycle, separate, and find solutions for the oil and for the batteries. And, you know, it has to go beyond just separating them here, the batteries, and send them down to Tilafushi, and then we don't know what happens there with them. So I think recycling is a big issue here in the Maldives, and we have a way to go.
For me, sustainability, by the way, is well-being for the world, isn't it? So I think wellness and sustainability, they're so linked. Talk to us about, are there imported or local products in your spa treatments?
For us, the big topic now is provide experiences and awareness increasing opportunities that ground our guests into nature. Just that connections, we want to be able to help that connection to become stronger so that we can have better discussions and better outcomes. I think we have an opportunity in the spa to achieve that. When it comes to products, we have a big Ayurvedic sort of section in our spa, and so all these products come from the southern part of India, not far. We do a little bit with local coconut oil, and then our sort of Western treatments are from an organic company out of the UK.
Sustainability, it's really important for us all to remember it's not just about the environment. It's also about, you know, social sustainability, your impact on communities, economic sustainability, how much money is staying in the local destination and benefiting locals, and what the sort of knock-on effects of that are. I will ask you my last question. Do you have any regrets in these 20 years?
I think I realized perhaps a bit too late the ability or the power of a hotel manager or a hotel management team in creating change. Truth is, we meet so many people, and we meet them at their best. We meet them when they are relaxed, when they are in the company of loved ones, when they are away from business, when they concentrate on what's really important in life, and they're ready for you know, being stimulated and perhaps make some changes in their lifestyle or make some changes in the way they have thought about things. That realization has come. It's come a little late, maybe. I'm also participating in a task force with Four Seasons about sustainability and the things we talked about today. And I can tell you that these days I speak more confidently, a little bit more pushily than I might have 5 years ago. I want to be heard because we have to move.
Absolutely, thank you. I would like to thank everyone for coming today. Please do carry on sending your questions. Please do keep the conversation going. Ask questions that are as difficult as possible, because that's the only way any of us can really make progress. And thank you, Armando, for, you know, recognizing we can all do better. And I'm going to say, you know, the Four Seasons is shown incredible leadership over the years, but we can all do better, much better. And as journalists, we can ask better questions and we can have deeper conversations. And thank you so much for joining us, and let's try and build back better.
Thank you, Juliet. It was...
Thank you, Juliet.